sacred world where a game is being played. The year is 750 AD. We do not know the rules or how many played, but this is no ordinary contest. They played this game for their lives. More than 1,000 years ago, the men who played and the crowds who watched would all vanish, leaving the arena and all their magnificent cities empty. Today, only mysteries remain. They were called the classic Maya. They built the greatest civilization of the Americas. When Europe was still in the Dark Ages, they produced artists and scientists whose achievements still astound. When London was just a town of wood shacks and dirt streets, the Maya were building mighty cities of stone in the heart of the Central American rainforest. This is the greatest of them all, Tikal. A thriving metropolis of 40,000 people reached its peak around 750 AD and covered an area the size of Manhattan. Less than a century later, it stood empty.
It's a mystery that touches everyone because we're all existing in civilizations, and we feel the fragility of civilization when we see something like the Maya ruins, when you see how high a civilization can develop and achieve and how dramatically it can disintegrate. It touches each of us.
Unlike so many other civilizations, the Maya did not fall to famine, invading armies, or terrible disease. Maya cities were deserted more than destroyed. The Maya who once inhabited these streets just walked away into the forest, never to return. Today, descendants of the Maya still live in the land of their ancestors. Yet their empire is no more. But why? Why did the ancients leave their magnificent cities? It is a question that has haunted historians and archaeologists for ages. Only by exploring the deepest beliefs of a people who died 1,000 years ago can we attempt to understand who they were and why they left deserted all they'd created. The trail is cold, but clues can still be found. Clues hidden in massive pyramids of stone. Clues written in a hieroglyphic code whose secrets were almost lost forever. Clues contained in ancient tales of mighty kings and dangerous gods, in a world founded in ritual and sustained by bloody sacrifice. Tales still told by old men to children, descendants of an empire that vanished long ago. The origins of the Maya lie in the forgotten histories of the first immigrants, the Asiatic people who walked across the Bering Sea from Siberia during the last ice age and settled the Americas more than 15,000 years ago. Thousands of years would pass before the primeval Maya established themselves in the sweltering jungles of Central America. Then, in a period lasting from 250 to 900 AD, the sophisticated civilization we call the classic Maya would flourish. Hundreds of cities were built. The vast territory that is now southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras became the Empire of the Maya. They thrived for more than 6 centuries. Then it was over. All across the empire, the Maya simply walked away. For almost 1,000 years, their ruins lay lost and forgotten. It wasn't until the 19th century that the world would rediscover the classic Maya. In 1839, travel writer John Lloyd Stephens and illustrator Frederick Catherwood explored the jungles of Guatemala. Their work captured the romance and mystery of the Maya world, while providing the first serious clues to the origins of this lost civilization. Explorers before them had theorized the Maya were descendants of the Greeks, a lost tribe of Egypt, or even fugitives from the mythic land of Atlantis. But these men believed otherwise.
Unless I am wrong, we have a conclusion far more wonderful than that of connecting the builders of these cities with the Egyptians, or any other people. It is the spectacle of a people possessing cultivation and refinement. John Lloyd Stephens, 1840.
Stephens understood this exotic civilization had not been developed elsewhere by others and across the Atlantic. The Maya, he suggested, were unique. His writings marked a turning point. A new era of exploration had begun. Adventurers and eccentrics came from all over the world. One French explorer arrived in Mexico with 4,000 pounds of luggage, and there was only one way to carry it. Not even the dense and dangerous rainforest deterred them. More than the promise of buried treasure lured these men into the unexplored reaches of Central America. They were seeking answers to the riddle of a lost civilization. They found treasure in abundance, but an understanding of the ancient Maya proved elusive. Archaeologists probed the jungle for decades, discovering great monuments in astounding profusion. Most intriguing of all, hundreds of pyramids that, like sacred mountains, reared up from the jungle floor. But the purpose of these pyramids remained a mystery. Then in 1957, it would all change. The place was the classic Maya city of Palenque. The great Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz had spent 4 years excavating the most impressive pyramid at the site, the Temple of Inscriptions. Now he stood at the threshold of discovery.
I entered the mysterious chamber with the strange sensation natural for the first one to tread the entrance steps in 1,000 years. I wanted to efface the centuries and hear the vibrations of the last human voices beneath these massive vaults. Across an impenetrable veil of time, I sought the impossible bond between their lives and ours.
In the center of the burial chamber was an enormous stone tomb. His men worked feverishly to raise its massive lid.
I was gazing at the death face of him for whom all this stupendous work, the crypt, the stairway, the great pyramid with its crowning temple, had been built.
This rare film shows Ruz moments after his dramatic discovery. But a ruined skeleton and a precious jade mask only raised further questions that nobody, not even Ruz, could answer. Who was he? What happened in his life that his death warranted such ceremony? Who was the man behind the jeweled mask? The Maya did leave clues, but they are cryptic, coded, and opaque. Only by deciphering this evidence can we understand the meaning of their sacred temples, the personality of the men and women who built them, and the reason for their sudden disappearance from the cities they abandoned. A century and a half ago, John Lloyd Stevens predicted that the strange, indecipherable engravings on their monument walls held the key to the mystery of the Maya. He was right, but only now, after one of the greatest code-breaking feats of all time, can the secrets of these silent stones finally be revealed. The sacred world of the classic Maya should never have become a mystery. They left, after all, an abundant written record. An independently invented writing system. Incredibly, one of only 5 produced in the history of the world. These were texts imbued with magical power, descriptions of their cosmos, chronicles of their dreams. Beautiful, fragile documents, they were a truly remarkable achievement. A unique and totally original written language, as momentous as the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. They bear witness to the birth of the first written language in the New World.
Esta es la letra A, B.
The importance of these texts was recognized by the first European invaders centuries ago. In 1562, a devout Catholic priest named Diego de Landa convinced one of the last surviving Maya scribes to translate the Spanish alphabet into Maya. Landa fervently wanted to bring Christianity to the Maya.
Esta es la letra A.
He felt learning their language was his best hope of reaching the people he yearned to convert.
A, B.
Landa dedicated his life to understanding the Maya and to saving their souls. Still, his memory is not revered. Rather, it is reviled.
Landa was distraught, I think, maybe even destroyed, when he discovered that people that he believed and he'd come to know had been converted to Christianity, and he found them continuing to practice pagan rituals. He lost it. He went absolutely crazy, and he began to try to root out and extirpate any remnants of ancient religion.
In a single night, this man of God burned hundreds of precious books. Books containing their science, their literature, a record of their lives. As the Maya looked on, it was as if every copy of their Bible and Constitution had gone up in flames. Throughout the Spanish conquest, thousands more texts were burned. Of the prolific output of Maya scribes, only 4 books escaped the fires to reach the present day. But 4 did remain. And from this scant evidence would come remarkable insights into ancient Maya culture. At first, only their sophisticated mathematical system was decoded. Maya math was tied closely to a complex system of astronomy. Their detailed observations of the night sky were recorded with astonishing accuracy. In the 1950s, the great Maya archaeologist Eric Thompson would conclude these were a people dedicated to studying the heavens and the meaning of time. 1,000 years before the first computer, they recorded celestial events 1/2 billion years in the past. But why such fantastically complex astronomical calculations? Thompson thought he knew. Maya society was practically utopian, he concluded. A peaceful people who worshipped time. A world run by tranquil priests and timekeepers. A place of sacred observatories devoted to the tracking of the stars. In the Maya, Thompson saw an idealized world of sacred beliefs and higher learning. His vision was as appealing as it was flawed. Certainly, the proof seemed all around him. The Maya built pyramids that were giant stone calendars and sundials. El Castillo, the Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, has 365 steps and platforms to mark the days of the year. Their alignment and design is so precise that once each year they cast a unique shadow that records the spring equinox. Like the star charts of an astrologer, their codices mapped the positions of the stars and planets for centuries to come. The Maya calendar was unlike any other. These great gears illustrate their concept of time. The hieroglyphs on the larger wheel mark the 365 days of the solar year. Those on the two smaller gears represent the 260 days of the priest's sacred calendar. Together, this Maya time machine identifies the astrological significance of every single day. Using this calendar, Maya priests predicted the precise time and place of solar eclipses. For the average Maya, it must have seemed as if their leaders controlled the awesome power of the heavens. The accuracy of Maya astronomy still astounds. The cycles of the moon were mapped so precisely that today, 1,500 years later, their calculations are off by only 33 seconds. Even the moment of Maya creation, some 5,000 years ago, is a fixed point in the sacred calendar. Forbiddingly, so too is the end of this world. According to the Maya calendar, the cycle of creation will cease to exist at precisely 4 Ahau, 3 Kankin. Sunday, December 23rd, 2012. Today, many Maya continue to await this day with dread. In the highlands of Guatemala, the few remaining Maya shamans and the last calendar priests still calculate the passage of time based on the ancient formulas. It has not slipped one day in 25 centuries. Maya texts revealed the hidden world of their mathematics and astronomy, but other, much more startling revelations were to come. Justin Kerr is a photographer who found a way to take pictures of Maya vases as they rotate in front of his camera, effectively unrolling the continuous image painted on the vase.
When I put the vase down on the turntable and watch it turning in front of the camera, I hope it talks to me. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the message is so obscure that it's very, very hard to get to. But sometimes it reveals itself.
And those revelations have created an entirely new understanding of the ancient Maya. Kerr's photographs reveal a people obsessed with the fearful and bloody gods of the underworld, the hellish place the Maya called Xibalba.
Some of these guys are very, very gruesome. The god of decapitation, for example, is a skeletal god. He very often is holding a decapitated head either by its hair, or he has them the head in his palms. He is generally portrayed with having large volutes of stench coming out of him.
For the Maya, the underworld was an ominous place. But to our eyes, many customs and rituals in their daily lives seem equally unsettling and bizarre. Children's skulls were deliberately deformed to create the flattened brow line the Maya found so pleasing. Maya women had their teeth drilled without known anesthetics and then set with precious stones. The use of mind-altering drugs was encouraged and condoned. Powerful intoxicants were smoked.
The Maya got high. The Maya took lots of drugs, but I think their drug of preference was fundamentally alcohol. And when they were so drunk that they were throwing up, they were then taking it as an enema, which would be a very intensive, even more intoxicating effect, to take balche, or some kind of fermented drink, as an enema. They were getting incredibly drunk.
Eric Thompson was aware of such grotesque and bizarre practices, but he refused to let them alter his idealized vision of the Maya. Then American filmmaker Giles Healy ventured into the jungles of Mexico. In 1946, Healy was led to a secret ruin by a Lacandon Indian named Chan Bor. There he made a discovery that would expose a savage truth and alter forever the world's utopian vision of the ancient Maya. Chan Bor brought Healy and his camera to a Maya ruin the outside world knew nothing about.
When Giles Healy walks into this room, he's got a whole formed notion of what the Maya are like. He's imagining that they were priestly timekeepers, a few wonderful noble men, maybe like the very Yaley Giles Healy, class 24. He imagines that they are going to be men like him.
Instead, what Healy found painted on the temple walls was a detailed depiction of the Maya not as peaceful stargazers, but as fierce warriors, devout believers and bloodthirsty deities, devotees of bloodletting and sacrifice. It was a portrait of the Maya that up until that moment seemed unimaginable.
I think, in fact, there is probably no more single powerful painting of warfare and of bloodletting in the world than this battle. It's full of sound and trumpets and screaming, and guys were all painted and pumped up. Some of them are already slain, the decapitated head, this other hunk of flesh. And the key point is right over in the corner of the paintings, where this guy is ripping out the fingernails of that particular captive, and his face is collapsing. He seems to be almost burbling something out of his mouth. Maybe it's blood dripping from where they've ripped out a tooth or two. And the rest of these captives seem now sunk right into their laps, their haunches. They look at their fingers. Blood is spurting right out of them.
This was an image of the Maya neither Eric Thompson nor the world at large could easily accept. Even these shocking scenes didn't immediately overturn the cherished ideal of the peaceful Maya. It was like a parent overlooking some obvious flaw in a child.
When Giles Healy walked into this room, I'm not sure that he knew what to make of it. But when Thompson walked into this room, he didn't see warfare. He saw a nasty little raid. In fact, he even wondered what was going on. The Maya wouldn't rip out fingernails. He thought perhaps there was some pot of red paint over here that people were dipping their hands into. He was that unhappy with it.
Giles Healy eventually finished his film. He focused on the Lacandon Indians who had been his guides. Descendants of the Maya, they too were portrayed as peaceful people in total harmony with nature. About the eerie scenes of violence, not a word. Giles Healy had cleaned the grime of centuries from the Bonampak murals, but he could not bring himself to reveal the truth. It would take years before Thompson would acknowledge his mistake. But a continent away, another discovery provided a new set of clues. By pure accident, in a most unlikely setting, a new chapter in Maya history would begin. May 1945. Berlin has been invaded by the Russians. The National Library is on fire. Hitler would soon be dead and Germany defeated. From the thousands of books burning in the ruins, a Soviet officer casually plucks a random souvenir from the flames. His name is Yuri Konorosov. The book, Reproductions of Surviving Maya Codices. Konorosov immerses himself in Maya studies. Blanda had attempted to describe. His great breakthrough was realizing Maya hieroglyphs were much more than a simple system of numerical signs. His work was amplified by another Russian, Tatiana Proskoryakov, a superb illustrator and archaeologist. Her keen eye detected patterns in the dates carved in stone. Where others had seen only numbers and signs, Tatiana read the entire span of human lives. Based on her findings, the code breakers went to work. They began to read the carvings on temple walls like tombstones in a cemetery. Much more than mere calendars, the images commemorated the entire reigns of kings and queens. The deciphered glyphs revealed the names of Maya royalty: 18 Rabbit, Smoke Jaguar, Stormy Sky, and Lady Shellstar. The lives of these rulers, their ancestors and their conquests, all the stories locked within the glyphs, could finally be told. 15 years after discovering the skeleton with the jade mask, Alberto Rus would now learn his identity. He was Lord Pakal, king of the city-state Enke. The 10th in a line of rulers that stretched back 3 centuries. He ruled for almost 70 years. Lord Pakal was one of the most powerful kings in the history of the Americas. These were monarchs who commanded complex cities, large populations, and vast areas of land. They ruled over their citizens with arrogance and disdain. But what was the source of their authority? Why did their subjects submit to such tyrannical rule?
We keep looking for the underlying source of the power of the kings, searching for economic and political and military power on a fairly grand scale. But the power isn't based in controlling resources or manipulating the economy or mounting large armies. It's based upon belief. That is the power of the Maya kings, and it was a great one, and it achieved great things.
The power of the Maya kings. To understand it, we must follow a trail of blood. A knife made from a stingray's spine. A rope of thorns. These are the key and the sacred power of their kings. Every portal of every Maya temple is a doorway to the underworld. Inside this temple, it is the duty of both king and queen to reenact the mythical moment of Maya creation. In myth, it was the blood of gods that gave life to man. This was the original act of sacrifice. On earth, the king is as a god. And blood is the price of power, the debt to the gods that must be repaid. Myths and symbols will not suffice. Blood must be shed. And royal blood, drawn from the tongue and from the genitals, from his queen and from himself, forever bound that sacrifice of the gods to the life of man. As his subjects watch, the bloody sacrament of the king spirals upwards to the gods. In return for the sacrifice of royal blood, the crowd believes, the gods will cause the sun to rise, the rains to fall, the corn to grow. For art historian Linda Sheely, these macabre bloodletting rituals provide the final key to understanding the Maya.
In the New World, people believe that your soul, the most potent part of you, the part that's indestructible, the part that you will pass on to your grandchildren and to your great-grandchildren, the thing that is eternal resides in your blood. So if you wish to give an offering that is the most precious and powerful thing on earth, you give your blood. When the king gives his blood, he's first of all giving the most powerful substance on earth, because his blood, because of his ancestry, because of where he comes from, because of the amount of times that he travels to the other world and comes back, his blood is more potent than an ordinary person's.
Remember that the kings had to do rituals of genital bloodletting and self-laceration on a regular basis. So that kind of keeps you honest, you know. I think if we had some genital bloodletting in modern politics, it would thin out the herd and might be a good approach to finding the honest politicians.
In fact, all Maya gave offerings of their blood.
The difference between them and us is we have it easy. We say you can tithe. You can give money out of your pocket. You can give something that doesn't hurt, something that really doesn't cost. The Maya don't let you make that sort of surrogate sacrifice. You really have to give the blood.
And there were other even bloodier offerings. Skull racks commemorate war captives sacrificed to ensure the continuity of the Maya world. Even the ball game served a deadly purpose. The contest, in fact, is not a game at all. Its losers were sacrificed to the gods. The Maya reveled in this terror, even recording the brutality for posterity. This sacrificial victim still emits an eternal howl of unimaginable pain. He has been scalped, disemboweled, his hands and feet mangled. The wood bound to his back is ready for the torch. Today, Maya shamans still practice blood sacrifice. But now it is the blood of chickens that is shed. The ancient faith is intact, but only as a pale reflection of the rites and ceremonies of the classic Maya. Sacramental blood still feeds the Maya imagination, but the context of belief has changed. Christianity may have, but once there, it struck a deep and lasting chord. The concept of a divine king who shed his blood for the benefit of mankind made perfect sense to them. For the ancient Maya, the blood of kings was the mortar that bound all life together. The king's sacrifice ensured the stability of the Maya world, guaranteeing the sanction of the gods and the belief of the people. He stood at the center of the Maya universe. Remove the king, and the whole system comes crashing down. For Arthur Demarest, the crisis for the classic Maya began the moment they lost faith in their kings.
The source of power is this ritual, this display, the ceremony, the theater, the charisma. And when real problems occur, when a military defeat occurs, even between centers, it can be devastating in a way that it shouldn't have to be. But the authority is based upon belief in the king. And failure is unacceptable, if this really is a holy Lord who can manipulate the forces of the universe, then failure undermines the whole system and it can't be adjusted for.
The problems Maya kings faced as their authority eroded were not unique, but their solution was more ritual, more sacrifice, more blood. But it didn't work.
I mean, you can genitally bloodlet and you can build temples as high as you want. It isn't going to make the soil thicker. It isn't going to stop erosion. It's not going to prevent invading enemies from winning because they have better weapons or tactics.
And eventually there were losses in war. Overpopulation in cities, failures of crops, and ultimately the king was responsible. If the blood of the king held the world together, when that world fell apart, it was the king's blood that had failed them.
When you begin to understand from the inside the way the Maya thought and the way their civilization was constructed, it's amazing that they maintained it for as long as they did. The mystery should not be the mystery of the Maya collapse, but the mystery of how the Maya for 2,000 years maintained this impressive civilization.
The Maya, they rose stone by stone out of the jungle, self-made and self-contained, unique and wholly original in all the world. But ultimately, the great dynasties and the great achievements of the Maya kings and queens, all their formidable powers, were built upon the faith of the people. And when crops failed or enemies prevailed, the people no longer believed. And when the people lost faith, the rulers lost power. And when that power vanished, the Maya abandoned their great cities, and the jungle reclaimed its stone. The Garden of Eden, our most enduring legend. A story found in one great civilization after another. A story of seduction, the wrath of God, and paradise lost. But is it merely a fable? Is there evidence the great stories of the Bible might be true? Was there ever really such a place as Eden? Today, the search for the Garden of Eden leads us to a dry and desolate land, to a place called Mesopotamia. This is the land where the first seeds of human civilization were sown. And it was here that three of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world flourished: Babylon, Assyria, and Sumer. Among their ruins, the faithful have long sought answers to the Bible's most profound mysteries, while archaeologists scoured these lands for the historical foundations of belief. Our quest for Eden is a journey back in time. First to Babylon, the last of these lost civilizations. Then further into the past to the Assyrians, fierce masters of the art of war. And finally, to a moment in the past so distant, only Eden could have preceded it. To Sumer and the creation of civilization itself. The great arc of the Fertile Crescent. Over the course of more than 6,000 years, this rich land, cradled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, gave birth to the first great civilizations. The Greeks called it Mesopotamia. We call it Iraq. By peeling back the layers of history here, we can trace the origins of our oldest stories and travel back to the deepest roots of faith. Our journey begins on the western edge of Mesopotamia in Israel. A chance discovery in 1947 would rivet the world's attention to archaeology and to the Bible. Two Bedouin shepherds are moving a herd of goats along the cliffs of Qumrun, a few miles east of Jerusalem. In the sun-baked desert, they notice a small cave obscured by a rocky slope. Curious, one begins to climb. It's not uncommon for ancient and valuable artifacts to be found along these bluffs. Inside the cave, the shepherd discovers the wreckage of ancient pots, leather scroll fragments, and some papyrus sheets, all untouched since the time of Jesus. These writings by an obscure Jewish sect called the Essenes would come to be known throughout the world as the Dead Sea Scrolls. In surrounding caves, hundreds of ancient scrolls would eventually be unearthed. One of them would prove to be the earliest known version of the Old Testament, including the crucial first 5 books, known to the Jews as the Torah. The Dead Sea Scrolls instantly became the focus of a tremendous international uproar as scholars and theologians fought over their ownership and their meaning.
And the sensation was outstanding. This was described as one of the most outstanding archaeological finds anywhere. So they are very precious to the Jews because they are Jewish. It comes from a very crucial period in Jewish history. They are very precious to the Christians because they are contemporaneous with John the Baptist and Jesus and so on. So they are very informative, but beyond that, we have a great emotional attachment to this library.
The Bible has always been a book read from 2 points of view, the sacred and the historical. A traditional Torah is always written by hand. The words are read aloud as the scribe writes, so they become a living prayer. And each Torah is considered holy from the moment it is written. But the historical accuracy of the Bible has never been so easily confirmed. It's an to this day.
Some of the books of the Bible are excellent historical books. As a matter of fact, the earliest historical books that we have. And quite accurate, because we have cross-references from other sources, and they are found to be mostly very precise. So they are very important.
The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was the most famous event in biblical archaeology, but it was by no means the first. The urge to explore biblical history has a venerable tradition. It's a search that began in the Holy Land, but would lead to Mesopotamia. Throughout history, crusaders, mystics, and believers have been drawn to sites where the great Bible stories took place. But with the arrival of the 19th century, a new kind of pilgrim sought to fortify their belief in the Bible through the infant science of archaeology. Surely, there could be no greater confirmation of their faith than to prove that biblical history was true.
The first aim of the biblical archaeologists was to locate sites mentioned prominently in the biblical narratives and to see if any illustration of those tales could be found. To use the ancient pottery, the ancient city walls, the ancient weapons as illustrations of biblical stories that all of them had been taught from their childhood.
Fueled by the excitement of early finds, scholars from all over the world raced to stake out claims in a kind of biblical gold rush. Competing British, German, and French archaeologists descended on the Holy Land. Teams of theological detectives digging for both God and country.
The prestige of each of the European nations in the Holy Land was measured by the kind of biblical discoveries that they were uncovering, and one of the most intense diplomatic and political battles that occurred in the history of biblical archaeology was the discovery of the famous Moabite stone.
In 1868, deep in the land of Moab, Bedouins of the Bani Hammada tribe stumbled onto a mysterious stone tablet buried in the desert. The tribesmen were no strangers to the antiquities of the area, or their value to Europeans. The first Westerner to hear of the curious black stone was the Reverend Frederick Augustus Klein. He immediately set off through the bandit-infested wasteland, accompanied only by a few Bedouin guides. Klein was a missionary, not an archaeologist. When he first saw the peculiar basalt carving, he felt a rush of excitement. suspecting the black tablet might confirm his deep beliefs. He examined the stone and made a rough impression of the inscription. It was in a language Klein didn't recognize. Back in Jerusalem, he sought help deciphering the stone. As news of the find began to spread, the streets and bazaars buzzed with rumors of a great discovery. The writing on the stone proved to be a Moabite king's account of a battle also described in the Bible. For the first time ever, here was written confirmation, etched in stone, of a story from the Bible. Two sources for the same event. For the faithful, it was proof they'd been looking for, concrete evidence of the Bible's historical accuracy. Many sought to buy the stone, but the Bedouins had reason to be wary. In the past, they'd been cheated, even robbed by European treasure hunters. Assuming that anything so highly prized by Europeans must contain gold, they dumped the stone into a fire in an attempt to break it apart. As fire heated the stone, they poured water over it, again and again, until finally it exploded. They found no gold, and the stone was destroyed. The first archaeological confirmation of a Bible story, the first corroborating evidence ever found in the Holy Land, was shattered. The loss of the stone was devastating, but it didn't end the biblical treasure hunt. Now that the Bible itself was verified as history, it pointed the way even further into the past, back more than 2,500 years ago, to a great empire ruled from Babylon, to the very moment the Bible itself was born. The year is 586 BC. The armies of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, descend on Jerusalem with the wrath of an angry God. It is almost 6 centuries before the birth of Christ. The Romans have not yet even dreamed of empire. It is a dark chapter in the history of the Jews, while Babylon's fierce star is rising. The Bible describes the Babylonian attack. Homes are pillaged, King Solomon's temple is set ablaze and utterly destroyed. 10,000 Israelite captives, princes, soldiers, artisans, and scribes, all are led to Babylon in chains. The Israelites crossed more than 500 miles of desert, following ancient trade routes across modern-day Jordan, Syria, and Iraq to Babylon. In Psalms 137, the Israelites lament, "By the rivers of Babylon there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land?" Broken and exhausted, the Israelites entered Babylon in awe of its scope and frenzy. Torn from the modest city of Jerusalem, they beheld the majestic capital of the ancient world. But somehow, the Israelites managed to do more than sing the Lord's song in this foreign land. They also wrote it down.
If you look at any piece of oral literature and then you write it down, you're formalizing it. You're immediately setting down a text which people can criticize or can say, this is the truth, everything else is wrong. That, I think, is the biggest effect of writing down the Bible or the Old Testament.
Today, the reconstructed walls surrounding Babylon are stamped with the name Saddam Hussein. But once the bricks bore another name, King Nebuchadnezzar. This was a land of many gods and pagan idols. an unlikely birthplace for one of the world's most sacred texts. Yet Babylon's great diversity created the perfect climate.
And they come into this cosmopolitan environment. Even the most educated among them and literate among them were being bombarded with direct contact with other people. And I mean other people.
The Israelites found themselves in a melting pot of different races and languages, conflicting gods and alien demons. What city is this, the book of Revelation would ask, clothed in purple and scarlet and decked with gold and pearls? The habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. But among all the abominations, even perhaps because of them, this was where the Bible first became a book. Threatened by an overwhelming new culture, Hebrew scribes were desperate to preserve and solidify Jewish identity. Over 3 generations of captivity, the scribes unified Israel's oral tradition, new writings, and sacred texts into a single manuscript. The Bible was born.
Fortunately for them, the Babylonians were pretty liberal. They allowed them to keep their own culture, their own religion, to study their own books. This is what preserved the Bible to this very day.
But as the books of the Bible came together over the long years of exile, Babylonian culture would profoundly influence the work of the Israelite scribes.
These were very literate people, I suspect, many of the people who went into exile. And scribes talked to scribes, and I'm sure that was how a lot of information was transmitted. And the exchange of ideas and knowledge must have been, I would use the word devastating. It must have been mind-blowing.
The Bible would eventually reflect stories and traditions from Babylon and even earlier Mesopotamian civilizations. The Israelites couldn't easily ignore Babylon's thriving culture and great monuments. Its temples were among the largest structures in the ancient world.
Big public buildings, the ceremonial walkway, the palace of Nebuchadnezzar with its legendary hanging gardens, palm trees, the river. If you had walked through the Ishtar Gate, you would have felt the waft. And this was deliberate. You were in the presence of something powerful. But on all sides of it was the city, the people, the commoners, narrow, winding alleyways, rows and rows of small stores, donkeys braying, crowds of people walking, small, closely knit quarters teeming with life.
And it was here, the Bible tells us, that one of antiquity's most extraordinary monuments soared into the sky, the Tower of Babel. For ages, adventurers and pilgrims hoped that finding the famous tower would prove the truth of Bible stories. One seeker who failed would write,
"No man durst go near to the tower, for it is all desert and full of dragons and great serpents, and full of diverse venomous beasts."
Medieval travelers claimed they had found the tower, this spiral minaret still standing in northern Iraq. But they were wrong. This tower was built 1,500 years too late and far from the walls of Babylon. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility was posed by Robert Koldewey, a German archaeologist. In the early 1900s, he discovered a rectangular ditch with only a few ancient bricks remaining. Many experts believe Koldewey had found all that survives of the famous tower. Babylon's great monuments made a strong impression on the biblical scribes. But her most enduring legacy, surviving to this day, is a Babylonian innovation far more impressive still: the rule of law. Babylon was the first civilization on Earth to have a written legal code. The original carved stone is an astonishing relic. Lost for hundreds of years, it would emerge in the late 19th century, a stone engraved with one of the most important legal documents of all time. 1,200 years before the Israelites were taken captive, a Babylonian king had this stone carved with the laws that bear his name, Hammurabi's Code. These writings can be read as precursors to the legal code in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy.
In societies where knowledge and law is transmitted orally and dealt with orally, precedent is terribly important. But when it got written down, the people who wrote it down had immense power.
Hammurabi's Code has influenced nearly every civilization since Babylon. Today, even some of its more primitive methods of judgment survive virtually intact. Hammurabi described a ritual called the ordeal, a painful, even deadly test of guilt or innocence. In some remote Bedouin tribes, the ordeal is still practiced, much as it was in the time of Hammurabi. In this rare footage, a holy man called the Mubashi will judge the accused by examining their tongues after they lick a red-hot iron spoon. These men have been accused of theft. They must submit to the ordeal or be found guilty by default. Family members look on anxiously as the young men prepare themselves for the painful ritual.
خمس دقائق لله تركينكم بين ايادي الله 5 دقائق لله خش الناس يابا ايوه خش خشه كويسه بس املى موقك ميه يا ابني زي ما عمل ده هو
Water doesn't ease the pain. It's meant to cleanse and purify the drinker and to ready him for judgment.
بتسد حنكك ليه يا ابني انت
The holy man prays and then examines the singed tongues, seeking a sign from God. Only the Mubashi can divine guilt or innocence, and he alone will determine the men's fate. At last, a verdict. One man is found innocent, to the great relief of his family. The other is not as fortunate. Declared guilty, he will be fined for his crime. The ordeal is an indeed modern-day echo of Hammurabi, but his laws reach even more directly into the present through the Bible.
Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
The Ten Commandments, the foundation of biblical law, and yet only the beginning of a complex set of codes and covenants central to the Old Testament. And in these laws, the clear voice of Hammurabi can still be heard.
Hammurabi set down laws. He didn't innovate a great deal. He merely set down in writing laws which had operated by precedent for hundreds, if not thousands of years, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and principles like this, many of which are still codified in law today.
But the Babylon that shaped the Bible and its laws had its roots in an even earlier civilization, one that reached its peak 7 centuries before Christ. It was the brutal empire of Assyria, a place the Bible called a land bathed in blood. Deadliest of all Mesopotamian armies to sweep through the ancient world were the Assyrians. In the Bible, they are the ultimate symbol of bloody tyranny and ruthless oppression. 100 years before Nebuchadnezzar took the Israelites captive in Babylon, the Bible tells us the Assyrian king Sennacherib attacked the lands of the Israelites. In the second book of Kings, the Bible says, "Behold what the kings of Assyria have done to our lands, destroying them utterly."
The Assyrians were ruled by despotic kings. They believed in absolute power. Now, absolute power means control, and absolute power almost invariably is kept in power by military efficiency and might. And the Assyrians maintained an enormously powerful and efficient war machine. And on the walls of Assyrian kings' palaces were the chronicles of some of their expeditions, written in vainglorious, grandiloquent terms.
The Assyrians, they would take a city, and they would stack up the heads of the leading citizens outside the gate, or they would take the king of the city and flay him alive and nail his skin to the wall, or something like that. But everybody did that.
Assyrian power, symbolized by the royal lion hunt, lay in the hands of merciless warrior kings. Even the Bible betrays grudging admiration.
Behold the Assyrian. Under his shadow dwelt all great nations.
Ezekiel 31. When the city of Rome was in its infancy, Assyria was the greatest empire in the world. For more than 1,000 years, details of Assyrian civilization were few. Even its great capital city of Nineveh was unknown to the modern world. Then, in 1852, these desolate ruins were explored by British archaeologist Austin Henry Layard. What Layard found here, in northern Iraq, was nothing less than the royal palace of Nineveh, an unspoiled treasure of Assyrian civilization. Tunneling like a miner through the earth, Layard uncovered great winged bulls and spectacular artistry, hidden from human view for a millennium. The world was stunned and excited by his breakthrough. Nineveh was another biblical city found, yet more confirmation of the Bible's historical accuracy. But the most momentous of Layard's discoveries was the great library of Nineveh, an extraordinary collection of 22,000 clay tablets inscribed with the cuneiform writing of the Assyrians.
The only direct communication that we have with the people of the ancient world, really, is what they left behind in their writings. We can know from that what they ate, what their medical treatments were, how they viewed religion.
Details of Assyrian daily life reveal a patriarchal society, a world where commoners, and especially women, had little status.
Every Assyrian woman, once in her early life, before marriage, would go to the temple of Ishtar, and she would sit on the steps, and she would wait there until some man came along and dropped a coin on the hem of her dress, and then she would go inside with him and do her thing, and that was it.
Yet in this despotic world, there was a kind of justice. In marriage, even a wife had certain rights.
The woman could specify in her marriage contract that her husband would have no other wives. She might specify that he could have all the prostitutes he wanted, but no other wives.
But if ordinary women had only limited status, recent discoveries reveal Assyrian queens enjoyed great privilege. In 1989, the ancient palace of Nimrud in northern Iraq set the stage for a startling find. Experts called it the most significant discovery since King Tut's tomb, the treasure of Nimrud.
While we were cleaning some of the rooms, we discovered that there are some indications for a vaulting underneath the floor. We took everything out and we tried to sort it, and we discovered that we have here the bodies of at least 2 queens.
Solid gold bracelets still adorned their bones. A royal treasure, entombed more than 2,000 years ago. This remarkable footage, shot by Iraqi archaeologists, is an exclusive record of their extraordinary discoveries. For the very first time, the tomb of an Assyrian queen had been uncovered intact. The royal sepulchre still displayed a curse to protect its occupants.
Should anyone break open the seal and remove me from my tomb, let his spirit roam in thirst under the bitter rays of the sun, and may the great gods of the underworld inflict his corpse and ghost with eternal restlessness.
Ignoring the curse, archaeologists excavated more than 125 pounds of beautifully crafted jewelry, crystal goblets, and exquisite carvings. The ancient Assyrians were master goldsmiths and artisans. But the value of this treasure far exceeds its worth in gold. In death, Assyrian queens were lavished with riches. But in life, it was her kings who forged history, kings with a taste for empire. In the year 701 BC, King Sennacherib and his army struck out across the desert toward the Mediterranean Sea. The bold Assyrians were determined to conquer all that lay in their path. The cities of Judah, including Jerusalem, and its rebellious king, Hezekiah. Fortress after fortress fell to the Assyrians, but it was the city of Lachish whose brutal destruction is best recorded in the historical record and in the Bible.
The siege of Lachish is a beautiful example of how an Assyrian army descended on a city, surrounded it, besieged it, reduced it, and took away its inhabitants to slavery, those that were not executed, men, women, and children. Their technique was very simple. It was brutal conquest, fast-moving conquest, systematic, efficient conquest. And on the bas-reliefs in Assyrian palaces, you see the siege engines, the soldiers moving up the mounds with the shields above them, protecting them from the debris thrown down below. But they had no hope in hell. Those guys were professional soldiers. It was a machine.
From the capital city of Jerusalem, King Hezekiah knew an Assyrian attack was inevitable. He raced to fortify the city and ordered an underground aqueduct dug, a desperate effort to protect the city's water supply in the face of a siege. Hezekiah's plan worked. The Bible tells us the Lord saved Jerusalem, and the king of Assyria returneth shamefaced to his own land. Sennacherib's version of the conflict was found on a clay prism unearthed at Nineveh. It matches the Bible story down to the smallest details, but its point of view is sharply different.
But as for Hezekiah the Jew, who did not bow down in submission to my yoke, 46 of his strong-walled towns I besieged and conquered. The awful splendor of my lordship overwhelmed him.
Stories are told from different angles, but they are in agreement. If you'll have to tell about what happened today and I'll have to tell, we'll tell different stories. We have the story of Sennacherib invading to this country. Each tells basically about the same historical event with absolutely no contradictions.
No contradiction. The result. In Sennacherib's version, Hezekiah is shut up in Jerusalem like a caged bird. But in the Bible, the Assyrian armies are held back by Jerusalem's walls. It is perhaps the earliest example of spin doctors at work. The God of the Israelites has the last word. I will break the Assyrian in my land, the Bible says, for through the voice of the Lord shall the Assyrian be beaten down. Isaiah chapter 6. And the Bible